And I liked your idea about, bringing people together. There's a lot of the coaches are sort of involved at some level of bringing their farmers or their communities together. But at some point, the one-on-one, might be necessary to really get past some obstacles and things like that. I did mention systems out there. We've got a question around that. Do you base your whole business on systems thinking and systems processes? And if so, are you able to explain how?
Well, to be brutally honest, I've actually two parts. One is I've had a lot of people describe our work in that way. But the second part of that is I've not done any reading on systems thinking ever.
But I think sometimes you can be operating within systems innately without even, realising that.
Well, I continually come back to nature as the blueprint for everything, right? There's an ecosystem in place, not an ecosystem. A lot of this space, which goes to that sort of pioneer thing, is built on an ecosystem, as my friend Brock Dolman calls it, in the US, and the cult of a personality. And we've got this front runner sort of blah, blah, blah. And we have very purposefully, we know what our context is. I know that I've had challenges in my life about trying to get the right amount of balance between business and in life with my family and local sport things. I love going to the local footy every weekend. I love Australian rules football, right? So I played it for a long time and I love that whole vibe and the whole scene and everything. And for a long time, I divorced myself from that and I didn't like it. So it was one of the things that when I got to the point of business maturity, and that's a thing that people go through in the succession of business. I mean, a mature business is very different to a startup, right? And people behave differently when they're in a startup to when they're able to get to a point of systemic maturity, which is, to use the ecological parlance, that's ecological succession in play, right? So you're going from being this tough little weed who's trying to find your way and cover the ground and get some roots in and try and shift from being annual to perennial to being perennial. And then what does it mean to stay alive as a perennial, right? And what is it like to actually achieve a space where you are part of a multi-strata forest as opposed to just being a field of annuals? A lot of us actually want to have lives, right? This is not the only thing that we do. Whereas when you're a pioneer martyr with the Messiah complex, well then, 5 marriages down the road, you go and look at the CV and there's the professional CV and then there's the personal CV. I don't want the personal CV of a lot of those folks. I love my wife. I love the fact that we've been together for 30 years, that we love each other, all the rest of it, that I have relationships with our children, so on. If you can't, I think it's hard to have both. There's not a lot of people who've been able to crack that with all the resources in the world. So that also means that you're not going to all those public meetings. You're not writing all those submissions. You're not, bending over backwards to try and change the world and get an aneurysm or a brain tumour when you're 50 and a number of marriages or relationships. So I often talk to people about that because I think it's really important. Yeah, we want to see the world change and all the rest of it, but there's a price that sometimes gets paid for that, which can be multi-generational and epigenetic.
That's absolutely fascinating, and it leaves the door open though to get the heat off you to support some of the startups, I suppose, or just sort of some of the.
Absolutely, it's a team game. I mean, that's one of the things that team sport. If you operate in clubs, you realise well-functioning clubs are made up of a whole team of people who are doing all sorts of things, and they all have value.
Yeah,
and we seem to forget that. When we step into put our business suit on, that there's actually highly functional community organisations which have a culture of working which we can learn a lot from.